This short video is on the factors that affect climate, in this case, air masses. So let's get started. What is an air mass? An air mass is a body of air that shares similar characteristics. In the case of air masses, usually the characteristics have to do with its temperature and moisture content. In North America, there are 6 major air masses that affect climate. They are located here, 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 and yes, here. Okay, so let's talk about each of these air masses individually, starting with this one over the Arctic. This is considered a CA air mass, which is short for Continental Arctic Air Mass. The C, representing continental, means that it is a dry air mass because it formed over land. The A represents Arctic, which signifies it is very cold because it formed over the Arctic. Now, I have had some very intelligent students point out to me the fact that this air mass cannot be dry because it formed over the Arctic Ocean. They're absolutely correct with their observations. However, because this area of the Arctic Ocean is generally always frozen, we tend to think of the ice as land. Why? This is because it's ice, water cannot evaporate into the air mass. However, with global warming and the ocean ice melting, this may all change in the near future. But again, that's the near future we're talking about now, and that's a different video. This next air mass is considered an MP air mass, meaning that it is a maritime polar air mass formed between 55 and 66 degrees north. The M, representing maritime, signals that the air mass is wet because it formed over water. The P signifies it is a cool air mass because it formed between 55 and 66 degrees north. The air mass on the Pacific near British Columbia is also an MP. Thus, the characteristics of this air mass are also cool and wet. Now let's look at this air mass over the Caribbean. This air mass is classified as an MT. The M, of course, representing maritime, making the air mass wet, and the T signifying that the air mass is tropical, telling us formed it is in the tropics, and thus it's warm. The air mass over the Pacific near California is also classified as an MT, thus its characteristics are also warm and wet. Finally, this air mass over Texas is called CT. The C represents the fact it formed over the continent, signifying that it is dry. The T signifies it is tropical. However, because the air mass formed over land and not water, in this case we say it's tropical and hot. This is because land gets hotter than water. Let's look at these air masses a little closer. These two air masses actually have very little effect on Brampton, but have a tremendous effect on the west coast. These two air masses blow in off the coast and hit the land. The mountains act as a barrier to the air mass. As a result, they both dump large amounts of rainfall on the coast and Rocky Mountains, and on the leeward side of the mountain, it is found to be very dry. This air mass off British Columbia, along the warm ocean currents, helps form a rainforest off the coast of British Columbia. Change topic a little bit. Take a look at this mountain climber. Take a look at the tree growing at his feet. But in reality, this is not a mountain climber, this is a tree climber. The purpose of this was to simply show you the size of the trees and the influence these air masses have on the vegetation. Now, if we look at this continental Arctic air mass, the arrow indicates the basic direction it tends to travel. That is correct, right towards us. In the summer, this air mass hardly affects us. Instead, it prefers to stay in the north. When it does come down towards us in the summer, it usually makes the day cooler than normal. In the winter, this air mass usually brings the colder temperatures. If this air mass happens to bump into the maritime tropical or the maritime polar air masses, in the winter it can bring heavy snowfall, freezing rain, and or sleet. In the summer, it would usually bring rain. This maritime polar air mass generally blows out to sea. However, if it does blow eastwards towards us, it usually brings rain and cooler weather. The maritime tropical air mass generally flows up the Ohio Valley from the Caribbean. In the summer, this is usually the air mass that belongs to the hot, humid days. These are the days where the temperatures may be 30, but the humidity makes it feel like 40 degrees Celsius. Humid means how much moisture is in the air mass. An air mass with 100% humidity means it is definitely raining. In the winter, this air mass can bring snow or freezing rain if it is cool enough. Finally, this continental tropical air mass also goes up along the Ohio Valley into southern Ontario. It brings nice warm days in the summer to our area. If the temperature is 25 degrees Celsius out, the humidity index would be very low, and thus it would probably just be 25 degrees. So, what is the rule about air masses and climate? Well, the rule is simple. Air masses carry their characteristics with them. For example, if you are experiencing cold, dry weather, chances are you're being influenced by a continental polar air mass. If it is warm and wet out, chances are you're experiencing the air mass from the Caribbean. Just something to keep in mind, all air masses head our way. This is why in Ontario, one day it may feel like 30 degrees Celsius out because we have a maritime tropical air mass over us. And the next day it could be below freezing. Why? Because that cold, dry air mass comes over and pushes the warm air mass out. So that's it for me and how air masses influence climate. Don't forget to check out other videos on the factors that affect climate. They are latitude, ocean currents, elevation, relief, and near water.